The following program was produced by Community Producer. The content, views, and opinions expressed are the sole responsibility of the Community Producer and do not reflect Malden Access Television, the City of Malden, or your cable provider. MATV welcomes your comments. Call us at 781-321-6400 or email us at access@matv.org.
Hello, Malden, and welcome back. Yes, we're back, 02148 in Studio B, and I'm back. I can't remember the last time we were on. For me, it's been a while, probably over a year, but today we have a guest. He is the current school committee member of Ward 6, the position I used to hold, and the Honorable Joe Gray. Welcome to my show.
Thank you, Jerry. My name is Joe Graham, the Ward 6 School Committee member, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm very glad Jerry invited me for this show. Jerry and I have been friends and, contestants for many years, and we get along pretty well. And I don't think I can express how happy I am to be here on the air and just fielding any old questions and talking about issues that are relevant to Malden and our constituents. Just fire away.
All right. Thank you. So for the people, obviously, of Ward 6, you know Joe Gray, and people who watch the school committee know who Joe Gray is, but there'll be people that are probably going to watch the show for the first time, or there may be people who watch the show all the time who don't know who Joe Gray is. So who is Joe Gray? How did you come to Malden, like your origins?
That's an interesting question. During the last election cycle, that sort of came up spontaneously during the candidates forum. It's not a secret, but I didn't know it was kind of a secret. At one point, I think one of the questions I was asked was, how do I relate to the immigrant community? How would I reach out to them? How would I understand how they work? And I was shocked when I received that question from the forum moderators. So I leaned into the microphone and said, I am an immigrant. You could almost hear a pin drop in the entire place. I'm an immigrant. I'm from Trinidad. I was born in Trinidad. When I was a child, I had a very thick Caribbean Trinidadian accent. And sometime around just as I got into high school, growing up in Boston, my accent faded. That's right around when people stopped asking me where I was from. That's when people stopped asking me about my accent. I grew up in Jamaica Plain. Pretty tough life. We grew up pretty poor. Once my father was able to bring my mother and the rest of us, brothers and sisters, here to America, I think around 1970. It was a rough time growing up in Boston, Jamaica Plain. A lot of drug, crime, infested neighborhoods, gunfights, knife fights, you name it. I don't know how my parents got us through that without me and my brothers and sisters getting caught up in all the gang and drug wars and all the violence of the 1970s, when it was literally happening in front of our house. So for me, just so you know, a lot of people don't know this, I grew up, in my mind, in between worlds. Okay, being an immigrant from another country as a child, I sort of had one foot in the Caribbean and one foot in America. I grew up in America. America's my home. I fall into a category. There's a certain category of immigrants from other countries who fall into a really tight category where when we come to America, we fully embrace the concept, the idea of America. You see me go around with the flag. You know, I joined the military. I did this, I did that, I did the other thing. Because I came from nothing and I had nothing. And I remember what it was to have no clothes, no shoes, no food, no electricity. You know, and I tell my kids, you know what? When I was a kid, when I was your age, we had some rocks and we found a stick and we had a game. we didn't have anything. So I appreciate the opportunities here in America. I appreciate with hard work, you can achieve things and do things in America. And I appreciate the opportunities. In my opinion, people don't appreciate, a lot of people who are born here don't appreciate how good America is. Am I babbling too much?
No.
Stop me if I'm going on too long. Think of it this way. You wake up in the morning, you know, maybe you're not feeling so well. You know, creaking, maybe arthritis, maybe heartburn, maybe this, maybe that. You're not doing so good to get a cup of coffee or you go to your dentist or someplace. You got issues. So what do? If you have issues in your body, you deal with it. You fix it. You go to the dentist. You go to the eye doctor. You work with it. In my opinion, America has issues. It always has. But what have we always tried to do here in America? Fix them. You remember that Tea Party and the Revolutionary War and the taxes? Yeah, there's violence. There's a lot of insurrection. But that was people trying to fix what they thought was wrong. There have always been problems in America. There are always problems within a family. There's always problems wherever you go, anywhere, any country. But in my opinion, America is about as good as it's going to get. America was founded on an idea as opposed to an ethnicity. And I don't think there's anything else quite like America in the world. And that's how I approach things. And it's, like I said, I have a certain focus as an immigrant coming into this, and I don't mind it. There are times when people persecuted me for being black. There are times when I felt persecuted for being a man. There are times when I felt persecuted for being straight. There are times when I felt persecuted for being a Christian. There were literally times when I was persecuted for being American.
No matter where you turned.
No matter where I turned. I mean, that one hit me. You know, when I was overseas in Germany back in the mid-'80s, you know, I was young. I was kind of stupid. It was during the Reagan era. You know, there are millions of people protesting across Europe and Germany. They were angry at Ronald Reagan because he was putting nuclear missiles in Europe to fend off the Soviets. And I don't know, I was like maybe in a bad mood one day. You know, I'm just a young soldier, 18, 19 years old. So I decide, against orders, just put on the denim jacket and just walk off in the middle of town. So I walk into the middle of German town. There's like hundreds of thousands of people protesting, down with America, da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, whatever. You know, and I could have gotten killed. Actually, one little old lady, must have been nearly 100 years old, you know, tried to attack me at one point. And I'm like sitting on a park bench and a bunch of middle of protesters like, I can't do anything. She's a little old lady.
Yeah.
I mean, so I just kind of sat there with my jaw hanging open, and she's swearing at me in German. You know, she was angry at me because I was American and I was black. Yeah, Africana, blah, 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 blah. I'm like,
Yeah.
there was no comeback. So thankfully, after a few moments, some young, like 18-year-old kid, maybe her great-grandson, came and apologized to me in German and hauled her off by, her elbow. I'm thinking, maybe I shouldn't be hanging around in the middle of anti-American protests in the middle of Europe by myself.
Yeah.
I could go, there are all kinds of stories.
Well, you brought up protests. We'll get to that later on. So for the people who want to know, how did you get involved in the school committee? Your very first inkling, for the people who don't know, why did you decide to run the very first time?
That's messy. How I got into politics had nothing to do with the school committee to begin with. I was on pretty much a rant concerning politics in the city, period. A little over 10 years ago, there was a huge crime wave. It was very well publicized here in Malden. Crime this, break-ins, this, that. It was pretty ugly. And a lot of people were really upset. We had gone to, our local counselor had a forum one night, and a bunch of us residents went, and I overheard some random person I'd never seen before say, I ought to run for city council. I said, yeah, you, whoever you are. If you're going to run, I'm going to be a campaign manager. He's like, you, who are you? I'm like, I'm Joe Gray. Who are you?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just spontaneous combustion. We didn't get very far. We had no idea what we were doing. We were clueless. I admit it. But it got me involved in city politics, which up until that point I hadn't been paying attention to. And then every little thing started to bug me. I'm like, what are we doing about crime? What are we doing about housing? What are we doing about the roads? What are we doing about the schools? At that point, I've got 3 children in the school systems, and the schools are crumbling. And I said to myself, what the heck is going on? And it just kind of snowballed from there. My focus and my wife's focus, from that point on, focused a lot on the schools. Everything else is kind of secondary. And then when that whole phase of life on, being campaign manager and trying to get somebody for city council, once that faded, all I was left with was, okay, I'm kind of in the system now. I'm kind of on the street corners holding signs. All I could focus on was the schools. Even during the time when I was helping out being a campaign manager for city councilor, I'd say, do you know what's going on in the schools? Blah, 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 blah. But nobody else seemed to be listening to me at the time. So eventually I just sort of went out on my own. It's been an uphill fight. It hasn't been easy. No, I mean, if we're talking nearly over 10 years ago, and it took me this long to get elected, in and out, in and out, it's been a wild ride. There's a lot more to it than that, but, if you want to ask me some specific questions, there's all sorts of different rabbit holes I could go down on different issues and topics. Like, for instance, one thing, I won't get into too much details or specifics, but one of the things I have to deal with is the way the school committee was run 10 years ago is not the way the school committee is being run now. And that's been, a little bit of a learning curve for me. But I'm dealing with it because I understand times change, the cultures change, and the things that were relevant 10 years ago are no longer relevant now. They're not even on the radar now.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the first time, for people who don't know, the first time I met Joe Gray is we both ran as write-ins. So I had no idea. I know the story went that 3 people had taken out papers. They missed the deadline, and I called City Hall, and I inquired about running, and I was told at the time nobody's running. And then I found out Joe ran, and I met Joe. And then about a week before the election, to our surprise, we found out we had another opponent come in the race. So there was a 3-way race, and that was a long night. You want to talk about recounts, and they asked me, would you like a recount after the things came out? And for the benefit of everybody else, I was like, okay, here we go again. I didn't know how long we were going to wait there. But what I will say about Joe is and Joe and I ran against each other 13 and 15, so 2013, 2015, and he has never launched anything negative against me and vice versa. We just did our thing. It was
just let you know. I don't believe in that. Well, what's the point of running a negative campaign? I mean, that's for higher level. If you're going to go for like city council or something.
Yeah, I mean, after I left the school committee, I tried to run. I tried to take the high road, and it hasn't gotten me anywhere. So I think if I have any more runs in me for anything higher, maybe take the gloves off. I don't know. That's not a a spoiler or anything. I haven't made up my mind, since I left politics. And I'll have to say, you're going to get this eventually if you ever leave politics. Do you miss it? And I had to be honest, I missed being on the school committee. Unlike you, I don't have any children, but I ran for school committee because I thought government had their claws too much into the schools, whether it's federal, state, or local. Parents, you're a parent. You know what's best for your children rather than a school. So that's why I got involved, hoping to make a difference. And I served. It's a learning curve. You come in, you're in the weeds. My a lot of things early on I tried to stand for were motioned against. I had more no votes. I may have held the record. I don't know at the school committee at that point, but I was proud of my record. I got things done. I tried to go against Common Core when parents called me, not knowing how the heck that was supposed to happen. I helped get the hockey program in, and I stood for the custodians, which at the time I was the only Republican on the school committee, and I got the backing of the biggest progressive union in the country. So people scratch their head to this day of how that happened, but they remembered that I helped the custodians. Then I left, and I missed it. I missed helping things, getting the opportunity to help families and students. And, you have that itch now. You're on the school committee. Subcommittees I was on. So in my second term, I was in a position of being one of the senior members. I know 2 of the members are still there, Lenny Iavino and John Froyo. I was on the budget subcommittee. It's very important, probably the top committee. I was the chairman of public facilities and safety, and I was co-chair of policy. So let me ask you, because you got inaugurated, and then a few months later, COVID hit. So you had all the politicians.
You're reading my mind.
Yeah, all the politicians. You're doing something that hasn't happened since 1912 with the influenza. Doing meetings on Zoom and stuff. You haven't really.
Let me correct you a little bit. I'm referring back to something I said a little earlier. The school committee is not like how I remembered it from 10 years ago. It's not like how you remember it from a few years ago.
Yeah.
One of the major things that just threw that pipe right in the bicycle spokes right there was COVID-19. Literally weeks after I got inaugurated, everything went off the rails. This year on the school committee has been like nothing anybody's ever seen. I won't get into too much details, but I'm not describing this in a positive way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it kind of bugs me the way things have to be now, the way that things are now, and what we've evolved into because of COVID-19. But in my mind, I'm adapting. I think everybody's adapting and everybody's trying to find a way forward. And I can hope things return to some sort of normalcy, but nothing, all those initiatives and things you talk about, the hockey league and all this stuff. I mean, there are no sports.
Yeah.
There are no sports. There are no arts. There are no fundraisers. There's no this. There's no that. There's nothing. I don't know how to put that into words. There's literally nothing right now, and that bugs the hell out of me.
I know, because you ran for a purpose to do something and to fix things, and you can't even, and it's hard doing stuff on Zoom.
You can't. Like, what if there's something that needs to be fixed in the schools? What's the point?
Yeah.
The kids aren't using the school buildings at all.
Now, not that anything could happen, but what are some of the subcommittees that you're currently on now?
I'm on technology, I'm on facilities, and I'm on, what's the
policy?
Other? No, not policy. It's another minor committee. And like I said, it's kind of strange because these subcommittees, it's like there's nothing to do.
Yeah. And no one knows how long, like
exactly.
You said, we don't know when we can get back to normalcy, so it could, people are supposed to start to campaign next year.
Like for instance, how do we have a subcommittee meeting on facilities and security if there's nobody in the building and there's no idea when anybody's going to physically be in the building? What's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, it just, everything's, I'm struggling for words. We're kind of, in some ways, we're just kind of floundering. We're just sort of coasting. And I've got my fingers crossed that this COVID thing goes away, like I said before, so we can get back to some kind of normal. I mean, there's nothing normal I can really tell you about. This whole cycle's been not normal. I may make some people angry, but I'm going to share a tiny little something, that I kind of think about. That
this is an exclusive here.
that maybe I shouldn't say, but what the heck? They can fire me. What I found fascinating, this is just me, is when running for the office last year, it was kind of weird trying to understand where the electorate was coming from. And then the candidate forum came around, and we knew, okay, we're going to be on stage, we're going to be on camera, we're going to have to answer these tough questions. I had no idea. I'd never been on the school committee before. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, they're going to ask us policy questions. Okay. Then they're going to give us 60 seconds to spontaneously come up with no notes, no nothing. Do you remember how many policy-related questions we were asked during the candidate forum for school committee?
No, I was
0.
Yeah, and I was there in the audience.
0.
Yeah, I thought that was a strange night too.
We were asked a lot about how we felt. How would we relate to people? Remember, I said one of the initial questions was, how would I relate to immigrants? And I'm thinking, what does this have to do with policy?
Yeah,
so like I said, I got a little annoyed. I'm like, I am an immigrant. I'm thinking to myself, why are they even asking me these questions? I mean, I could answer these questions in my sleep.
Yeah. And so twice when you ran for school committee, when I ran as well, you sometimes bump into somebody on the street, maybe another candidate. Did you at all interact with your opponent this time?
Oh, yes. Oh, she's a lovely woman. I enjoyed meeting her. Beautiful young family, husband and children, and she was really nice. I think my opponent was her children went to the Forestdale, I think, and there were times when I don't want to pat myself on the back, but gave her a little help, here and there during the campaign because she was new, just like with you and I. It wasn't contentious. No mudslinging anything, but don't take this the wrong way. I treated her a little nicer than I treated you.
Yeah. Well, I guess you got to treat everyone nice these days because you never know. You're running for office and anything.
Well, I mean, like one minor example, when it came time to get signatures, it was July 4th, Trafton Park, she had to be away somewhere. Somebody came by, had signature papers for her, and I'm like, okay, I'll help. I got like 15, 20 signatures for her to help her get on the ballot. I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
More competition. So I stood there and I asked people to sign her up. Sign my papers, sign her papers, da-da-da-da. Blah, blah, blah. And it was just a nice community thing, a communal thing, and sometimes we'd just meet her on the corner holding signs and we'd trade notes and just chat, da-da-da-da-da, share pizza. I mean, it's nothing big.
Yeah.
But people, in my mind, people don't expect that. They expect to be nasty. They expect the backstabbing. Another exclusive. I'm going to say right here now on the air.
Uh-oh, too exclusive on this.
You got that right. I'm going to say it now because occasionally people ask me. I have no plans whatsoever to run for city council. I am not doing it. You heard it here, and if anybody asks me again, I'm going to say the same thing. I have no desire and no intention to run for the Ward 6 City Councilor seat. Okay? So stop asking me.
Oh, see, I didn't know. Because I didn't know people were asking you, because that's usually, they always say, oh, that's the, what's that word I'm looking for? The
next step
heir
up.
apparent. Yeah, the heir apparent, the next step sometimes. So I didn't know people were asking you that. I figured people would ask you, because of COVID, do you plan on running again for school committee?
Oh, yeah. If I'm going to run again, unless something changes between now and next election season, the plan is to run again. And if there's a challenger, there's a challenger. If I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. But the plan is to run again. There is no plan to run for city council seat. You heard that? None.
People at home taking notes.
Don't force me. Don't offer me money. Get lost. I don't want it.
Yeah, that's, another thing that the school committee, I don't want to say it's controversial, but there was a lot of people, give or take, that weren't happy with the vote, the one of the latest votes you had to take concerning the opening of schools. I know
You're
it was a very
absolutely right. That was very controversial, and there were some people who were upset at me. But I tried to explain before the vote. I put out a note before the vote happened, not breaking any rules.
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to discuss the vote.
Yeah.
But I put out a note, hours before the vote saying, you know what, I received some paperwork. It looks like the writing's on the wall, which way this vote was going to go. And so what do you mean? I'm like, no, I can't say anything publicly, but after we take the vote, I'll let you know. So we took the vote. Everybody saw it. Some people were happy. Some people were angry. And then I explained after that school committee meeting why I took the vote I did. I said, sometimes you have to be practical in life. And sometimes you have to follow the law and legal recommendations. And what I shared with people was the fact that on the school committee, we had received an official letter from the Board of Health specifically requesting that schools be completely remote for health-related reasons. Came through official channels. The instant I saw that, I said,
yeah.
I just let the air out. I'm like, where do you go with that? What's there to debate at that point? Regardless of how people feel, how angry they are, if we have an official letter from the Board of Health saying people could get hurt if we don't do remote, and specifically requesting this, that has to have weight. There are a bunch of other issues in the mix that, for political reasons, I'm not going to discuss on the air, but that was the main thing. The other reasons for taking that vote were just as valid, but that was the main public one. That was the icing on the cake, because until I got that letter from the Board of Health, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have an open mind. I'm going to listen to all the pros and cons and listen to the arguments. Second that letter came across my desk, I'm like, it's over in my mind. What's the counter argument to that? If you get a message from the Board of Health, implying that people may die, what expertise would I have to argue against that realistically? Nothing. I had nothing at that point.
Yeah, so then the question remains, because this was brought up. I had a phone conversation with somebody in Malden. I won't give out the name or what ward they're in, but I
talked to several people about it.
They actually, unfortunately, called me yesterday and said that because of this vote, they pulled their children out of the Malden schools and they're going private. And they said that their argument was that they knew it was inedible, but they wanted someone to at least bring up the topic of reopen, knowing that because you said the letter that was tying everyone's hands back, to at least come out. Maybe, the letter was the final straw. Yeah.
There were a bunch of other things. There are other legal things in the food mix that I can't really go into detail. But I told people ahead of time, and I told people afterwards, and it's in writing. You could go on my Facebook timeline and see exactly what I wrote. And I put a quote in my sentence, quote, "the final straw," period.
Yeah.
And I understand how that parent feels. Listen to what you just said. The parent kind of knew that's the direction it was going to go, for whatever reason, for their own reasons, but the writing was on the wall.
What I don't here's where I don't understand then, because I'm not on the school committee. Obviously, you are. You got the letter that if the public schools are not open or they're doing the remote, then you have private schools and the charter school that open. So does the Board of Health not?
Okay,
this is confusing.
It's actually not confusing. I was hammered on this exact issue by constituents in Ward 6. They asked me this question, and I had private conversations where I explained to them step by step what's happening with the charter school versus the public schools. Let me see if I can remember some of the relevant details in my step-by-step explanation. Once I explained it to them, they understood. Okay, let's build it this way. The charter school is an independent school district. The charter school has its own board of directors. Governor Baker legally authorized all schools to open and gave them the option for in-person teaching. Okay? This is state authorized. So then each board for each school district gets to independently decide whether to have in-person or not, regardless of what the Board of Health says. The Board of Health is automatically overruled by the state government at that point. Think about it. If the governor authorizes the charter school to open, all the Board of Health can do legally is make sure that the charter school adheres to the governor's guidelines for opening in person. That's it. The Board of Health can complain all they want. People can complain all they want. But the legal authorization's there. Whereas the city of Malden went in the opposite direction. The school committee for the city of Malden is part of the city government. The board of directors for the charter school is a private entity. It's not part of the government. For the school committee, as part of the government infrastructure, we're under more legal obligation to respect government mandates and government rules. So if one department in the government here in Malden says it's a health risk, we shouldn't do it, then it would be really strange for another part of the same government infrastructure here in the city to defy it. That's a hard sell. That's the reality we're up against.
Yeah.
Whereas the charter school could tell the city government to go pound sand.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some other things in the mix that are more controversial and legal to back this up, but I can't really go into it in detail. But let me put it in vague terms, the other part of my answer. If the city government, if the school committee open the schools and the teachers do not show up, what's the point anyways? Checkmate.
Yeah.
There's and there are other reasons beyond that I can't go into, but the governor gave permission, the charter school took it and ran, the Board of Health can't stop it, and the teachers weren't going to show up anyways. There was nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So people may not like the vote, but any other vote would have been pointless.
You heard on that subject. You heard it straight from.
I'm sorry. I know there's some people who are going to hate on me.
No matter what you do,
no matter what you do.
That's what I learned in politics.
Yeah, but it's the truth. Yeah. It's the truth.
And now is the school committee officially adjourned?
No, no.
I'm thinking we're in September now. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in September. Everything's back.
You had the budget. How did that go? Were there any?
Everything's according to the governor. We're level funded, so we're trying to keep everything level going into the next year, and hope the state finances stabilize.
Do you think, in your opinion, it will get worse? The cuts for next year?
No, that all comes back to COVID-19. How long we stay shut down? Because the longer we stay shut down, that's suppressing state revenues. It's suppressing tax revenues. They've got, in my opinion, they've got to loosen the restrictions statewide and try and find a way to get more people back to work, get more people working. But everybody's scared right now. A lot of schools are shut down. A lot of universities are floundering. Some schools are shutting permanently. I'm not talking too much about other industries and businesses. I'm mostly concentrating on the schools because that's where my focus is right now. But when you have some schools and some universities closing doors permanently, that causes a chain reaction in the local communities, restaurants, grocery stores, laundromats, you name it. And that kind of ripples outwards. So you're going to have pockets throughout the state where universities are shut down, where entire communities are becoming depressed, and that's pushing down tax revenues. People can't pay rent. People can't do this. It's a mess.
And I know I don't know if this has ever happened. I don't know if because of a hurricane in the past, but this is the first year we couldn't do any wards, couldn't do 4th of July. So Joe came up with the idea with the few volunteers to go around on Memorial Day and honor some memorials that were along the way on corners, and then he did something for Flag Day, and then same thing for the 4th of July. How did that come about? How did that brainstorm?
That was me. I just insisted on doing something.
Yeah.
Got a few volunteers, a merry band together, call ourselves the Maplewood Association. We were going to try and make ourselves into, some sort of 501c3 or something. We're planning on doing something official this year, but everything just got derailed by COVID.
Yeah.
So we're literally doing nothing. But what we are doing is like, okay, we're going to take it slow. And occasionally, if there's an opportunity to do a community event, we're going to do it. Whether it's Memorial Day, you saw the video, walked around to the different memorials in Ward 6, talked about it, played patriotic music. 4th of July, the same thing. Rode around with the flag, played patriotic music, saluted everybody. Just trying to build some sort of community pride, something. And our little band of volunteers were going to try and do something for Halloween, but something different this time. People are getting tired of, us running around in a pickup truck waving. Like, it's old. So we're going to try and have some sort of Halloween contest. The basic outline is, decorate your house, register with us, send us your address. We'll come by, we'll take pictures or something, and then we'll have a little contest. Maybe we'll have a contest. Maybe we'll have people vote on, what's the best dressed or best decorated house. And we're thinking of putting together something like little gift certificate awards, for the best Halloween house or something. Maintaining social distancing, no parades, no parties, no nothing, because we just can't right now. But as each major holiday comes around, if there's something we can do to get people into any kind of community spirit, I'm going to try. I admit we're sort of fumbling around a bit because this had never been done before.
Yeah.
But my attitude is, why not? Oh, you remember my disastrous plan to try and do movie night in the park?
Yeah.
that got shut down by the Board of Health real fast. I'm like, whatever.
That's strange because I see on Facebook there's all these other communities that do that. Not just in general, like the place where they do the Topsfield Fair. Mm-hmm. They're doing movie night drive-in.
Yep.
So that's it's unfortunate. But I remember every year the past few years on Halloween, there's a certain house on Granite Street and next door, and they do little hot dogs and they do stuff and the mayor and political figures walk around.
It's going to be hard to do that this year.
Yeah.
Just earlier today, I just saw a news article where Los Angeles has canceled Halloween. I said, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah. I know there's a movement out there. I'll plug it. Save Halloween 2020. I don't know, all the details on that, but I guess you could. There are large crowds, obviously. I mean, sometimes years have gone by. There's literally nobody that. Never mind COVID. Before COVID, I remember a time nobody came to the house. I don't know if it was due to weather or it was just.
Sometimes it is,
Yeah,
but this trend of canceling Halloween festivities, I think that's going to spread. I really do.
I hope not, because we shouldn't cancel Thanksgiving and all these other holidays approaching.
I don't know what to tell you.
And what about the church? Do they cancel? Is it too early? Do they usually have the bazaar in the basement?
Everything's shut down. Everything.
Okay.
No bingo nights. Nothing at the church. They can't. They're under strict guidelines. And I mean strict.
Yeah.
The church steps out of line in any way, shape, or form with COVID rules. I guarantee you the hammer's coming down on them, and they don't want to chance it. So after church service is over, slam, the doors are locked. The church doors usually stay locked until about 15 minutes before church services start. Nobody gets touched, no events, nothing. I mean,
I may have to get a costume and go trick-or-treating myself.
To where? Everybody's going to have their doors locked.
I'll have people buy candy and I'll just show up at the like that. There was that commercial, the stovetop, or that encore, the food. The guy that was on Happy Days used to say, "Oh, I'll be there Tuesday night," and there's that commercial. He played Al on Happy Days.
Yeah, I remember.
I forgot what food that was. That food, the microwave dinners and stuff. They came.
I know which one you're talking. I don't remember the exact food either.
Encore,
something like that.
Yeah,
something like that.
So we have about almost 10. Wow, time flew by with Joe and I.
Oh,
yeah, we almost have 10 minutes. We'll touch upon
whatever we
a
want
few
to talk
things.
about.
You said earlier. I said I'd get back to it.
What?
Protest. I know in the past you'd bring your camera and you'd go to videotape.
I still do.
Protest. Okay, so you were at one of the ones early. How was that experience before? I think it was before COVID. Was one, right?
Which one?
Okay,
from the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can remember. Beginning of the year, I started off with the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign rally. So I attended that. I mean, the COVID thing was just starting, and nobody knew, and nobody had masks. But it was already in the news. So I did some amateur reporting on the Bernie Sanders rally. I went some amateur reporting. I went to the Black Lives Matter protest in downtown. I got some good videotape of that. And then as soon as it became dusk and the sun was going down, I said, oh, maybe it's time to go. Because I could tell there's some bad-looking people coming into the crowd, and they're going to cause trouble. So I'm like, I'm getting a little old. So
yeah.
So I left, and then they burned, breaking and burning things in Boston. I'm like, I don't need to see that. The Black Lives Matter rallies here in town, I attended that, got some video. Joe Kennedy, when Joe Kennedy came to Malden, I recorded his entire campaign rally. Where was that? I believe
the BB school, maybe. I think?
Yes, it was the BB school. That was interesting. Attending Joe Kennedy's rally, and people in his staff kept asking me, "Do you want to interview Joe Kennedy? He'll do an interview with you." I'm sitting with no, I don't want to interview him. I'm just going to stand here in the corner, and I'm just going to record him. I'll let the professional news people do that. Then there was one minor screw up I made just a short while ago. There was an anti-mandate rally taking place in Boston Common recently. So I went that Saturday. I had no idea that the rally got moved to the following day because of the weather, the rain. So I show up on Boston Common. I'm looking, well, where are all the angry protesters? Where'd everybody go? So guess who I found? Dr. Shiva. I'm like, Dr. Shiva? And he was talking about the anti-mandate thing, but then he is just off in all sorts of strange grievances and pet peeves, and it was incoherent. And then I realized, he's running for Senate. I'm like, oh, gee, this guy's getting no news coverage. What the heck?
Yeah.
I turned on my camcorder and I just recorded anyways. So then I went back the next day and I went to the real anti-mandate vaccine rally, and I got some good coverage at that. And that was interesting. And a lot of times what shocks people about these rallies that I go to and protests, at least half the crowd isn't wearing masks. And 3/4 of them aren't social distancing. Nobody's social distancing. Almost nobody's wearing masks. So I'm standing in the middle of the crowd with my camcorder or my cell phone, just going around in a circle. And then I take shots of the state troopers and the Boston police a few feet away, just twiddling their thumbs, watching. Nobody's getting arrested. Nobody's wearing masks. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And you're not hearing any news about anybody being infected. At one point during the anti-mandate rally, one of the speakers, some charismatic black preacher type guy, got on stage, in front of the State House, and asked everybody to hug each other. I'm like, ew. So everybody there on Beacon Street, like, I don't know, maybe 600-700 people at least, started hugging each other. I'm like, no, I kind of hid behind my camera. I'm like, I'm not hugging anybody.
Yeah.
But they were so happy. Everybody was so, they were protesting. They didn't like what Governor Baker was doing with all these new mandates, blah, 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 blah. It was interesting. To me, maybe it's the way I've grown up emotionally. I don't mind hanging around protesters and protest rallies. And it doesn't matter what political end of the spectrum they're on. Okay? As I've grown up, I'm used to being in all kinds of environments around all kinds of people. A lot of times people who just don't like me. I'm like, look, I'm just here. I got my camcorder. I'm not trying to cause any trouble with anybody, because sometimes you get into these crowds and people are drunk and they're looking for a fight. I'm like, not me. I'm just the guy with the camera.
Well, we still have some time, less than 10 minutes, before I give Joe the opportunity for his final words to the public. I'm just going to plug a few things if I could.
Oh.
So MATV is back, as you know, and there are 4 co-hosts of 02148, which I do the second Wednesday of each month. So next Wednesday, the next time I'll be on the air, I don't know if we're still going to do tapings or it'll be live, but I am trying to secure Senate candidate Kevin O'Connor. I actually had lunch today with someone on his campaign staff. We had lunch across the street. Another plug, All Seasons Table. They opened yesterday, and I came in today, had lunch. So I think the date, I don't have my phone on me or a calendar near me. I think that's Wednesday, October 14th. I'm trying to have U.S. Senate candidate Kevin O'Connor, and people have asked me what I have been doing throughout this. Back this past April, I became, believe it or not, and we do exist, the new current chairman of the Republican Party in Malden. They were defunct for 2 years. I wasn't part of it at that time, but I helped revive it. We're back. If anybody wants any information on that, send me an email, leoneformalden@gmail.com, or call me 781-635-7070. And with that, I'll send it off to Joe Gray with his final comments. We have 5 minutes. You don't have to use up the whole 5 minutes. Just whatever you want, or I'll send us off the air. So.
Oh, geez, 5 minutes. I don't know if I got 5 minutes. You know, I'm just talking in general. Who's that Senate candidate? That's interesting. I think I saw him at your event, and I'm sorry to say that was really the first time I've heard about him, but he's getting very little press coverage, especially in this town.
Yeah, and that's I'm trying to help that. He went against Dr. Shiva, and what was interesting were there was some real strict conservatives that were supporting Dr. Shiva. People need to do their research, because what a lot of people don't know is Dr. Shiva has a record of assault from a couple years ago, which it's public record, and he was asked about this on Howie Carr, and he totally had a meltdown and would not answer the question. So I told people I can't personally support someone who does that, you know.
I remember that.
Especially so does Kevin O'Connor fit the whole conservative checkbox? No, but he had a lot of good ideas. There's some issues that I wish he talked about, especially with veterans, because I'm a veteran, Joe's a veteran. So he will trying to get him on the air here next month and to give him more exposure. But see, the thing is, he's got a small crew, and they have to go statewide. And this is Ed Markey country, you know, especially in Massachusetts, in his own backyard. So I know a few days after my event, they had a rally at the police station. And a few other people showed up. So that's Kevin O'Connor. I mean, you can email me if you want further information. But, again, I don't know if we're going to be taping or live, but I think it's October 14th. It's the second Wednesday of October is when I had the person write down on the calendar. So be very interesting. It's going to be, you know, some people. I think the undecided are going to decide this vote, just like in Malden. We have 50% of the registered voters Democrat, but 40 are unenrolled. And
just so you know, because a lot of people ask me sometimes, I'm a political moderate, and that bugs people, because people a lot of times want you to take sides.
Yeah. And
I'm unenrolled, I'm a moderate, and I like to see things from all sides and all different angles. So people are never going to see me, you know, out there going rah, 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 sis, boom, bah, you know, hardcore for one side or the other, unless there's a personal connection. You know, there are some people who I do campaign for or do help out on a local level. You know, like Steve Oltrino, for instance, you know, always going to give him a helping hand every now and then, because he's been good to my family. I'm always going to give you a helping hand every now and then, you know, because you're a good neighbor. You know, then people say, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, I like Jerry, and I like Steve. I don't care that they're from opposite parties.
Yeah.
You know, it's a personal relationship. And sometimes in politics, that matters. For me, that matters. So if people want me to be, you know, some hateful Republican or hateful Democrat, it's not. No, I'm not going there. I'm not getting sucked into those conversations. I guess it's a side effect from my father, you know, from Trinidad. You know, he's, I know it's a derogatory term, but he was off the boat from Trinidad. You know, he wasn't American at all. But his philosophy was to get along with everybody. to try and be friends with everybody, with the emphasis on try. And for my father, it was just easy, it just flowed. Everybody liked him.
Yeah.
And that's what I aspire to be like. Dad had it right.
All right. Well, the parents know best, that old saying. So we're wrapping it up. We have 10 seconds left. I'd like to thank school committee member of Ward 6, Joe Gray. I'm Jerry Leone. This is 02148 Studio B. We're back. And remember, stay safe, help the elderly, and wear your masks.
Have a good night. Bye, everybody.
Bye.